The radio crackled once, then went silent. Petty Officer Marcus Webb pressed the device against his ear so hard it left a mark on his jaw, willing it to speak again. Around him, 4 men crouched behind a crumbling stone wall in the dark belly of a valley they were never supposed to enter. The mission had gone wrong 2 hours ago. The extraction team had turned back. Command had issued the words no soldier ever wants to hear. Mission assets no longer viable for recovery. They had been left. Not forgotten exactly, just released, like a kite whose string had been cut, left to fall wherever the wind decided. Marcus looked at his team. Rodriguez had a field dressing wrapped around his thigh, soaked through. Callahan was running on adrenaline and prayer. Nguyen hadn't spoken in 40 minutes. Torres was the youngest, 23 years old, and he was looking at Marcus like Marcus still had answers. Marcus didn't. But he keyed the emergency frequency one last time, more out of habit than hope, and spoke their coordinates into the void. Nobody expected a response. The voice that came back was older, scratched with static, carrying the cadence of someone who had once lived inside cockpits the way other men lived inside houses. "Copy that. I've got your position. Sit tight." That was all. No call sign. No unit designation. Just those words, delivered with the quiet authority of someone who had done hard things before and survived them. Torres grabbed Marcus's arm. "Who is that?" Marcus shook his head. He didn't know, but something in that voice made him believe, and belief was the only ammunition they had left. 15 minutes later, they heard it, the deep, unmistakable rumble of a fixed-wing aircraft cutting low through the mountain pass. Not a helicopter, not a drone. Something old, something that had no business being in this airspace, in this country, on this night. The plane came in so low that Marcus could see the navigation lights blinking like a heartbeat against the black sky. And it banked hard, drawing fire from the ridge, deliberately pulling the enemy's attention upward, away from the valley floor. It gave them the window they needed. They ran. Rodriguez limped and Callahan carried him, and Nguyen found his voice again, shouting coordinates into the radio as the aircraft circled back for a second pass. Taking fire it had no armor to absorb. Marcus didn't let himself think about what that meant for the man in the cockpit. He ran because stopping meant dying, and the stranger in the sky had just traded his own safety for their 30 seconds of darkness. They made the extraction point. An Allied vehicle was waiting. Not the original team, but a field unit that had picked up the emergency frequency and come anyway. They loaded in. They moved. And Marcus kept looking at the sky, watching the old aircraft climb and bank and finally disappear over the ridge, chased by tracers that lit the clouds orange. They never shot it down. 2 days later, from a hospital bed in a safer country, Marcus started asking questions. He described the aircraft to an aviation officer. The man went quiet, then pulled up a photograph on his tablet and slid it across. A vintage military transport retired from service over a decade ago. One known private owner, a man named Colonel James Rutherford, 71 years old, a Vietnam-era pilot who had spent the last years of his life volunteering with a private humanitarian organization that monitored emergency frequencies in conflict zones. Unofficially. Quietly. Without recognition or pay. He had heard their call. He had simply decided to answer it. Marcus flew to meet him. He didn't know what he would say. He found Rutherford in a small airfield outside of nowhere, patching the fuselage of his battered plane with the focused patience of a man who had made peace with impermanence. He was smaller than Marcus expected, thinner. His hands were steady in the way that hands only become after years of shaking and choosing to hold on anyway. Marcus tried to thank him. The words came out broken and insufficient, the way gratitude always does when it runs too deep for language. Rutherford listened to all of it, then set down his wrench and looked at Marcus with the eyes of someone who had carried his own ghosts for a very long time. He said that he had lost men once, long ago, in a valley not unlike the one Marcus had just escaped. He said that nobody had come for them. He said that he had lived every year since then trying to be the answer that never came, not out of guilt, but because he believed that every life left behind creates a kind of debt the living owe to the future. He had been paying it quietly for decades. Marcus didn't say anything. There was nothing to say that the silence couldn't hold better. He flew home to his family. He held his daughter for a long time at the airport, and she asked why he was crying, and he told her he had met an angel. She laughed the way children do when they take wonder seriously. And Marcus laughed too, because some things are exactly as miraculous as they sound. And the world is stranger